When it comes to the deadlift, especially the barbell deadlift, which is the most commonly programmed of the barbell lifts for Salem kettlebell training students, it's easy to get hung up on the lift part of the name. But in spite of the name, the deadlift isn't simply you lifting the bar off the floor. When we think of something that lifts, we see a crane lifting. We're going to use better mechanics than that. We're going to enlist the help of levers, because that's what your body is. It's levers. We're going to get loaded into the weight, and then we're going to wedge ourselves between the weight and the floor. When it comes to step one, loading against the weight, there are a few aspects of that loading. One is to create the tension in your body. You can do that with grip, you can do that with breath, you can do that by sinking the lats down, pulling the shoulder joints down so that you have no armpits. That's increasing the tension on your body. The second is to pre-lift the bar, the second way in which we get loaded. Well, what do I mean by that? So let's take your bar on the platform, and we're just going to get a little bit of a fulcrum here, let's say a box. And then we're going to put the end of a crowbar underneath the bar and on top of the box. So we're going to use this crowbar, and we're going to use, as the lever, we're going to use the box as the fulcrum of the lever, and we're going to just pull back on the crowbar, and that's going to give us our load into the bar. As overly simplified as it may seem, getting yourself into the weight is as simple as rocking back. So when I get set up for my deadlift, right up against the bar, if my weight's in the balls of my feet, when I start to lift, I'm going to have to drive straight down into the floor to get that bar moving. If I rock back enough to start to fall over, then it's my act of falling that's going to start the bar moving off the floor. And you'll feel the slack in the barbell collars come out. There might be an audible sort of clink noise as the barbell lifts inside of the collars, which lift inside of the plates. You might feel, if you've got a sufficient weight, you might feel the bar start to flex a little bit. All simply by rocking back. This fulcrum is going to be virtual behind you. It's going to be where your body gets to before the bar basically has to come up. So the fulcrum, although there's not a box here, it's the bottom position of the hips, and it's when the hamstrings and glutes and quads are all maximally engaged simply by rocking back. You rock back against weight, your muscles are going to anticipate you taking that weight, and you're good to go. That's getting the weight off the floor. You simply load into it, and the weight will start to move. That brings us to our second concept, the wedge. So I've started the bar off the floor, it's starting to move here, but I want to finish the lift, so I need to wedge my body underneath the bar. We'll take our same box here. And we'll put a wedge underneath the bar, and then we'll simply drive that wedge underneath the bar. When we were loading, the force on the crowbar came from simply rocking back. Once we get the bar moving, the force driving the wedge forward is going to be hip extension. Two main hip extensors, the glutes and the hamstrings, which we've already gotten recruited by loading. That, combined with the muscular tension we created with the grip and the shoulder pack and the breath, the bar is starting to move. Now I'm going to drive my hips forward, and that's going to finish my lift. That's the deadlift. It's not gripping and standing up with the bar. It's getting yourself loaded against the bar and then wedging your body between the bar and the ground. Now, obviously, your whole body isn't going to get between the bar and the ground, but the idea is to drive the hips forward and sort of replace the bar's position with that of your legs. There's my wedge. One thing that we didn't talk about in either of these key concepts was your back, because it's not involved. It's simply a rod connecting the ropes that are your arms to the bar so that the hips can do the driving. All the musculature on the back side of the body. And we can do the same thing when we pull sumo. Set, load, and wedge. This time, in addition to wedging the hips forward, we're going to wedge the knees in. So it's not just hip extension that's creating the wedge, but also knee extension to a much greater degree than what we are encountering on a conventional deadlift, that with a narrower stance. So although it's a little bit more complicated, both of the same concepts apply. Get loaded, drive a wedge. Use your body weight, use your hips, or in the case of sumo, the hips and knees extending simultaneously. Do this with that full belly breath. Spine won't be touched by your deadlift. You'll be good to go. The same rules apply on a kettlebell deadlift as they do on the barbell deadlift. The difference being now the load is not out in front of us, it's between our feet. We automatically have better leverage. And our wedges are more like what we have in the sumo deadlift because we're standing over the belt and getting it to lock out. So the mechanics are more challenging on a barbell deadlift. That said, a heavier weight is typically used because you have a limit as to how heavy your kettlebells can be. Get loaded, drive a wedge, lift the fucking weight.